A little girl helped the CEO pick up papers, until he saw her birthmark on his family's table, a revelation that changes his life completely. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the journey. The October wind whipped through downtown Chicago's financial district as William Harrison hurried toward the glass towers that housed his empire. At 45, Bill had built Harrison Industries from nothing into a billion-dollar conglomerate, but today felt different. The morning news had been brutal: another hostile takeover attempt, stock prices plummeting, and whispers that his age was finally catching up to him. His leather briefcase felt heavier than usual as he rushed past the small park where office workers grabbed their morning coffee. The doctors had been calling all week, wanting to discuss his latest test results, but Bill had no time for medical nonsense. He had a board meeting in 20 minutes that would determine his company's future. As he rounded the corner near Millennium Park, a sudden gust of wind caught him off guard. His briefcase popped open, and papers scattered everywhere: contracts, financial reports, confidential documents worth millions flying through the autumn air like confetti. "Damn it!" Bill cursed, his heart racing as he watched his life's work dancing in the wind. That's when he saw her. A tiny girl with golden curls, no more than 6 years old, was already chasing the papers with determined little steps. Her small hands grabbed document after document, her bright blue eyes focused on helping this frantic stranger. "Here, mister!" she called out in a sweet voice, clutching a stack of papers to her chest. "I got lots of them." Bill's breath caught in his throat. Not because of her kindness, though that touched his hardened heart. Not because of her innocent smile that reminded him of someone he'd lost long ago. It was her right wrist. As she handed him the papers, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing a small birthmark, a perfect 5-pointed star, dark against her pale skin. The same birthmark that had marked the Harrison family for 4 generations. The same birthmark his daughter Sarah had carried. The same birthmark that had disappeared from his life 23 years ago when Sarah walked out his door in anger. Pregnant and alone, swearing she'd never speak to him again. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Bill whispered, his powerful voice cracking for the first time in decades. "Emma Grace," she said proudly, then pointed toward a small apartment building across the street. "I live over there with Mrs. Jensen. She takes care of me 'cause my mommy went to heaven when I was little." Bill's world tilted on its axis. Emma Grace. Sarah had always loved that name. "Emma," he repeated, kneeling down to her level, studying every feature of her face. The nose was Sarah's. The determined set of her jaw was pure Harrison. "How old are you, honey?" "6. I'm gonna be 7 next month. Mrs. Jensen says we might have a cake if she gets her disability check on time." Through the apartment window across the street, Bill could see an elderly woman watching nervously, probably wondering why this well-dressed stranger was talking to her ward. Bill's hands trembled as he pulled out his wallet, removing a crisp $100 bill. "Emma, this is for helping me. You make sure Mrs. Jensen gets this, okay?" Emma's eyes went wide. "That's more money than I ever seen." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, sweetheart. Very sure." As Emma skipped back toward her building, clutching the money like treasure, Bill stood frozen on the sidewalk. 23 years of wondering what happened to Sarah. 23 years of regret eating away at his soul. And now, his phone buzzed with another urgent message from his board of directors, but for the first time in his career, William Harrison ignored it completely. Because somewhere in that little apartment across the street was a 6-year-old girl who might just be the granddaughter he never knew existed. A granddaughter who could change everything, if he was brave enough to find out the truth. But first, he had to discover what happened to Sarah, and whether Emma Grace's appearance in his life was a miracle, or the beginning of his greatest heartbreak yet. Bill Harrison sat in his executive office, staring out at the Chicago skyline as the board meeting he missed sent his phone into a frenzy of angry buzzes. But for the first time in 23 years, business wasn't his priority. Sarah's face haunted him. The last time he'd seen her, screaming through tears that he'd never understand what it meant to put family before money. She'd been 19, pregnant, and desperate for his support. Instead, he demanded she choose between the baby and her trust fund. Pride, he whispered to himself. Damn, pride destroyed everything. His assistant knocked tentatively. Mr. Harrison? The board is asking. Cancel everything for the week, Rebecca. Family emergency. Rebecca's eyebrows rose. In 15 years, Bill had never mentioned family. Within an hour, Bill had hired Marcus Thompson, Chicago's most discreet private investigator. Marcus was a former police detective who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. I need everything about Sarah Elizabeth Harrison, Bill said, sliding a photo across the desk. Last known address was Seattle, 2001. She was pregnant when she left. Marcus studied the photo. Sarah at 18, her bright smile and determined eyes so much like Emma's. Any reason she might have changed her name? She hated me enough to burn every bridge. Changing her name wouldn't surprise me. What about the father of the child? Bill's jaw tightened. Some college kid named Danny Martinez. Art student. I had my lawyers pay him to disappear when I found out about the pregnancy. Marcus made notes. And you're sure this little girl is connected? Bill rolled up his sleeve, revealing the distinctive star-shaped birthmark on his wrist. 4 generations of Harrisons have carried this mark. The girl has it too. That's not coincidence. As Marcus left to begin his investigation, Bill found himself driving back to the small apartment building where Emma lived. He parked across the street, watching through the windows. There she was, Emma Grace, sitting at a small table with an elderly woman who must be Mrs. Jensen. They were sharing what looked like peanut butter sandwiches, Emma's legs swinging as she chattered animatedly. The scene broke something inside Bill's chest. His granddaughter was eating peanut butter sandwiches while he owned restaurants that served $1,000 meals. She was worried about birthday cake money while he could buy the entire building without checking his account balance. His phone rang. Marcus, already with news. Found something interesting, Mr. Harrison. Sarah did change her name to Sarah Grace Martinez. Married Danny Martinez in Las Vegas, 2002. They had a daughter, Emma Grace Martinez, born November 15, 2017. Bill's heart pounded. Where are they now? That's where it gets complicated. Sarah Martinez died in a car accident 18 months ago in Portland. Danny Martinez. Marcus paused. He overdosed 3 months after Sarah's death. Heroin. The world spun around Bill. Sarah was gone. Forever. And Emma had lost both parents before she was even 5 years old. How did she end up with Mrs. Jensen? Margaret Jensen was Sarah's neighbor in Portland. She's 72, retired teacher, living on Social Security. No family of her own. When Child Services couldn't find any relatives for Emma, Mrs. Jensen stepped up as emergency foster care. They moved to Chicago when Mrs. Jensen could no longer afford Portland rent. Bill closed his eyes. Sarah had been in Portland, just a few states away, and he'd never known. Never tried to find her. Never swallowed his pride long enough to apologize. Mr. Harrison? There's something else. Mrs. Jensen has been trying to adopt Emma officially, but she can't afford the legal fees. And Marcus hesitated. She's been having health problems. Diabetes, heart issues. Social Services is starting to ask questions about her ability to care for a 6-year-old long-term. Terror shot through Bill's veins. Emma could be taken away. Put into the system. Lost forever, just like Sarah had been. But there was something Marcus didn't know yet, something that could change everything. Emma Grace Martinez was actually Emma Grace Harrison. She was his blood, his legacy, his chance at redemption, and he was going to fight heaven and hell to bring her home. The next morning, Bill stood outside the modest apartment building, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual tailored suits. He practiced this conversation 100 times, but his hands still shook as he climbed the narrow stairs to apartment 3B. Margaret Jensen answered the door cautiously, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes wary behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You're the man from yesterday," she said. "The one who gave Emma money." "Yes, ma'am." William Harrison. I was hoping we could talk. About what? Mrs. Jensen's protective instincts were clearly on high alert. About Emma. And about Sarah. The color drained from Mrs. Jensen's face. You knew Sarah? She was my daughter. The words hung in the air like a confession. Mrs. Jensen's hand flew to her chest, and she stepped back, studying Bill's face with new understanding. Emma! She called. Come here, sweetie. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her cartoon pajamas, her golden curls messy from sleep. When she saw Bill, her face lit up. It's the paper man. Did you lose more papers? Bill knelt down, his throat tight with emotion. No, sweetheart. I came to see you. To talk to Mrs. Jensen about something very important. Mrs. Jensen invited Bill inside, and he was struck by how clean and organized the small space was, despite its obvious age and wear. Children's books were stacked neatly on a coffee table. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. It was clearly a home filled with love, even if it lacked money. Emma, why don't you watch cartoons while Mr. Harrison and I talk? Mrs. Jensen suggested. As Emma settled on the couch with the remote, Mrs. Jensen led Bill to the tiny kitchen. Sarah never mentioned her father, Mrs. Jensen whispered. She said her family was dead to her. I made terrible mistakes, Bill admitted. I was young, proud, and I chose business over my daughter. When she told me she was pregnant, I gave her an ultimatum: give up the baby or lose her inheritance. She chose her child. Mrs. Jensen's eyes hardened. Good for her. Yes, Bill said quietly. Good for her. She was braver than I ever was. Why are you here now? Bill showed Mrs. Jensen the Harrison family birthmark, then gently pointed out Emma's matching mark as she sat watching television. Emma is my granddaughter, Mrs. Jensen. She's the last piece of my family I have left. Mrs. Jensen sank into a chair. Oh my God! I wondered about that birthmark. Sarah had the same one. You did right by Emma, more than right. But I know about your health problems, about the financial struggles. I know social services is asking questions. Tears filled Mrs. Jensen's eyes. I love her like she's my own granddaughter. But I'm 72, and my diabetes is getting worse. Sometimes I can barely afford her medicine when she gets sick, let alone proper food or clothes. I lie awake at night terrified they'll take her away from me. What if they didn't have to? Mrs. Jensen looked up sharply. What if Emma could have everything she needs, medical care, education, security, while still having you in her life? What if you didn't have to choose between loving her and being able to provide for her? What are you suggesting? Bill took a deep breath. I want to be part of Emma's life. I want to provide for her, make sure she has every opportunity Sarah never got because of my pride. But I'm not trying to take her away from you. You're the only mother figure she's known. I'm asking if we can work together. From the living room came Emma's sweet voice. Mrs. Jensen, the man on TV has the same mark as me. Both adults looked over to see Emma holding up her wrist next to a commercial featuring an actor with a similar birthmark. That's not the same mark, baby, Mrs. Jensen called back gently, but Bill's heart was racing, because he knew what this moment meant. Emma was starting to notice things. Starting to ask questions, and very soon, she was going to ask the one question that would change all their lives forever. Why do I have this mark, and where did it come from? That evening, Bill returned to his empty penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. The space was immaculate, expensive, and completely soulless, a monument to everything Sarah had accused him of valuing over family. He poured himself a scotch and pulled out a box he hadn't opened in over 2 decades. Inside were photos, letters, report cards, and memories of the daughter he'd let slip away. Sarah at age 5, missing her front teeth, grinning as she helped him plant flowers in their old backyard. Sarah at 10, presenting him with a handmade Father's Day card that read, "World's Best Daddy," in crayon. Sarah at 16, rolling her eyes at his overprotective rules but hugging him goodnight anyway. And then the last photo, Sarah at 18, her high school graduation. She'd been so proud, so ready to change the world. That was just months before everything fell apart. The fight replayed in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't escape. "Dad, I need you to listen to me," 19-year-old Sarah had pleaded, her hands protectively covering her barely visible pregnancy. "Danny loves me. We want to get married, raise our baby together. He's a penniless art student, Sarah. He'll drag you down into poverty. You have everything, your trust fund, your future, your education at Northwestern. Don't throw it all away for some college romance. This isn't about money, Dad. This is about love, about family. The things you taught me were most important before Mom died." That was the line that had sent Bill over the edge. Bringing up Catherine's death, using it as ammunition in their fight. "Don't you dare bring your mother into this. She would want what's best for you, not what feels good right now. I'm giving you a choice, Sarah. The baby or your family. You can have both." "Then I choose my baby," Sarah had said, tears streaming down her face. "Because I'm like you, I know what unconditional love means." She'd walked out that night and never came back. Bill had been so certain she'd return. So sure that a few weeks of struggling would bring her crawling back, ready to be reasonable. Instead, his pride had cost him 23 years with his daughter and 6 years with his granddaughter. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Found Sarah's journals in storage. Mrs. Jensen has them. Thought you should know." Bill's hands trembled. Sarah's journals might contain her thoughts about him, about their fight, about Emma. They might also contain the answers to questions he was afraid to ask. The next morning, he returned to Mrs. Jensen's apartment. Emma was at a neighbor's house, playing with another child, giving the adults privacy to talk. "I want you to know something about Sarah," Mrs. Jensen said, settling into her worn armchair. "She talked about you sometimes. Especially when she was pregnant and scared." Bill's breath caught. "What did she say?" "She said you weren't a bad man, just a man who forgot what mattered. She said she hoped her baby would have your strength but not your stubbornness." Mrs. Jensen reached under her coffee table and pulled out a small wooden box. "These are Sarah's journals. She kept them her whole life. I've been saving them for Emma when she gets older, but—" She paused. "Maybe you should read them first." Bill's hands shook as he accepted the box. "Are you sure? Sarah wrote about you right up until the end, Mr. Harrison. I think she would want you to know what she really thought, not just what she said in anger when she was 19. That night, Bill opened the first journal, Sarah's teenage writing, filled with typical high school drama but also peppered with entries about Dad working late again, and "I wish Dad would talk to me about Mom instead of just working all the time." Then came the entries from college. "Dad called today. He never asks how I'm doing, just about my grades. I think he loves me, but he doesn't know how to show it anymore. Not since Mom died." And then, the entry that broke his heart. "Found out I'm pregnant today. I'm terrified to tell Dad. He'll think I'm throwing my life away, but I can't give up this baby. I already love him or her so much. I wish Mom was here to help me figure out how to make Dad understand." But it was the final entry that destroyed him completely. "Emma Grace was born today. She's perfect. She has Dad's birthmark in Mom's eyes. I named her Emma after Mom's middle name and Grace because that's what I hope Dad finds someday, the grace to forgive us both. I know he thinks I chose the baby over him, but I was hoping I could choose both. I was wrong." Bill closed the journal, tears streaming down his face. Sarah hadn't chosen the baby over him. She'd been hoping to choose both, and he made it impossible. Marcus Thompson called Bill at dawn with urgency in his voice. "We need to meet. Now. I found something about Emma's situation that changes everything." They met at a quiet diner near Bill's office, Marcus sliding a thick folder across the table. "Mrs. Jensen didn't tell you the whole truth about Emma's placement," Marcus began. "Emma isn't in informal foster care. She's in the system officially, and there's a court hearing scheduled for next month." Bill's blood ran cold. "What kind of hearing?" "Termination of Mrs. Jensen's guardianship. The state says she's too old and too sick to care for a 6-year-old. They want to place Emma in a permanent foster home or put her up for adoption. But Mrs. Jensen said, Mrs. Jensen is scared. She's been getting letters from social services for weeks. Her diabetes is worsening, she had a small heart episode last month, and her landlord is threatening eviction for late rent. The state thinks Emma would be better off elsewhere. Bill felt his world tilting. Who's handling the case? Social worker named Jennifer Walsh. She's thorough, by the book, and she genuinely believes she's doing what's best for Emma. But here's the thing, she has no idea Emma has family. What do you mean? Marcus pulled out another document. When Mrs. Jensen applied for guardianship after Emma's parents died, she listed no known relatives on the forms. She told the truth as far as she knew. Sarah never mentioned you. Danny's family wanted nothing to do with Emma after his overdose, and nobody thought to do a deeper search. Bill studied the papers. Emma Grace Martinez, orphan, ward of the state, heading toward permanent separation from the only family she had left. There's more, Marcus continued. I did some digging on Jennifer Walsh. She's good at her job, but she's also got 43 cases on her desk. She's been pushing for Emma's placement because she thinks a younger family can provide better stability. Have you told her about me yet? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first because there's a complication. Bill's stomach dropped. What complication? Mrs. Jensen has been telling Emma that her daddy and mommy are angels watching over her. Emma doesn't know she has any other family. If you suddenly appear claiming to be her grandfather, it's going to be traumatic and confusing. So what do you suggest? We need to move carefully. First, we establish paternity through DNA testing. Then we work with Mrs. Jensen to gradually introduce the idea that Emma has a grandfather who wants to be part of her life. Finally, we present a united front to social services, you as the biological family member, and Mrs. Jensen as the caregiver Emma trusts. Bill nodded, but Marcus wasn't finished. There's one more thing. Jennifer Walsh has already identified a potential adoptive family for Emma. The Richardsons, young couple, financially stable, good references. They've been trying to adopt for 3 years. They want Emma specifically? They've requested to meet her. If that meeting goes well, and if Mrs. Jensen's guardianship is terminated, Emma could be placed with them within weeks. Bill's hands clenched into fists. Some strangers wanted to take his granddaughter, raise her as their own, erase every trace of her connection to Sarah and the Harrison family. How long do we have? The court hearing is October 30th. That's 3 weeks. Then we have 3 weeks to prove that Emma belongs with her family. But as Bill left the diner, a terrible thought occurred to him. What if the Richardsons really could provide a better life for Emma? What if a loving young couple was better than a 45-year-old workaholic grandfather and a 72-year-old diabetic? What if fighting for Emma was actually hurting her? That evening, Bill sat in his car across from Emma's apartment building again, watching her through the window as she helped Mrs. Jensen prepare dinner. Emma was laughing at something, her small hands animated as she told a story. His phone buzzed with an email from his assistant. Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Stock prices down 12%. Investors demanding answers about your recent absences. For 23 years, Bill had put business first. It had cost him his daughter. He deleted the email without responding. He wouldn't make the same mistake with Emma. But first, he had to figure out how to tell a 6-year-old girl that her whole life was about to change, again. The DNA results came back on a rainy Thursday morning, confirming what Bill's heart already knew. Emma Grace Martinez was 99.97% certain to be his biological granddaughter. But it was the phone call from Marcus that same afternoon that changed everything. Bill, I need you to sit down. I found Sarah's medical records from Portland General Hospital. Her medical records? Why, Sarah didn't die in a random car accident, Marcus interrupted. She was driving herself to the emergency room. She'd been having chest pains for weeks but couldn't afford to see a doctor. She was uninsured, working 2 minimum-wage jobs to support Emma and Danny's drug habit. Bill's vision blurred. What are you saying? Sarah had a massive heart attack while driving. The car accident was secondary. She was trying to get help, but it was too late. The phone slipped from Bill's numb fingers. Sarah had died because she couldn't afford medical care. His daughter, his brilliant, beautiful daughter who should have inherited millions, had died because she was too poor to see a doctor. There's more, Marcus continued when Bill picked up the phone. I found her employer records. Sarah was working at a diner and cleaning offices at night. She'd been trying to save money to get Danny into rehab. She wrote letters to several addiction centers, begging for payment plans. Bill closed his eyes, picturing Sarah, who used to have everything, scrubbing floors at night to try to save the man who was destroying their family with his addiction. The medical examiner's report shows she'd been having symptoms for months. Her coworkers said she'd been clutching her chest during shifts, but she always said she couldn't afford to miss work. Why didn't Mrs. Jensen tell me this? She doesn't know the details. She just knows Sarah collapsed and there was a car accident. The full medical reports weren't released to her. Bill stared out his office window at the city below. While Sarah was dying from an untreated heart condition, he'd been closing deals and accumulating wealth he didn't need. While his daughter was begging for payment plans at drug treatment centers, he'd been buying his third vacation home. Sir? There's something else. Bill braced himself. I found a letter Sarah wrote to Emma but never sent. Mrs. Jensen found it in Sarah's things and has been saving it. She thinks you should read it. An hour later, Bill sat in Mrs. Jensen's kitchen while Emma napped, holding a sealed envelope addressed to My beautiful Emma, in Sarah's familiar handwriting. She wrote this about a month before she died, Mrs. Jensen explained. I think she had a feeling something was wrong with her health. With trembling hands, Bill opened the letter. My sweet Emma, if you're reading this, it means Mommy went to be with the angels before I could tell you all the things I wanted you to know. You are the most precious gift I've ever received, and being your mommy has been the greatest joy of my life. I want you to know about your grandpa. His name is William Harrison, and he lives in Chicago. I was very angry with him when you were born because we had a big fight when I was young and scared. But Emma, he's not a bad man. He's just a man who forgot how to show love after his wife, your Grandma Catherine, died. Your grandpa has a birthmark just like yours. It's been in our family for a very long time. When you see that mark on your wrist, remember that you come from strong people who love deeply, even when they don't know how to say it. If something happens to me, I hope someday you'll find your grandpa. I hope he's learned that love is more important than money, and I hope he can give you all the things I couldn't. Tell him I forgave him long ago. Tell him I understand why he was scared when I was pregnant. He thought he was protecting me. Tell him I named you Grace because that's what I hope he finds. You are loved, Emma Grace. By me, by your daddy Danny, even when he's sick, and by a grandpa who doesn't know you exist but who will love you with all his heart when he finds you. Be brave, be kind, and remember that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose to build, not just the ones we're born into. All my love forever, Mommy. Bill couldn't breathe. Sarah had forgiven him. She'd understood. She'd named Emma, Grace, for him, and she died believing he didn't know his granddaughter existed, when the truth was so much worse. He'd known she existed and had chosen pride over love. Mr. Harrison? Mrs. Jensen's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? Bill looked up, tears streaming down his face. She forgave me, Mrs. Jensen. Sarah forgave me, and I never got to tell her I was sorry. You can tell Emma, Mrs. Jensen said softly. You can make sure Emma knows her mother's love and her grandfather's love. You can make sure she never has to choose between them. From the bedroom came Emma's sleepy voice. Mrs. Jensen? Is someone crying? Bill wiped his eyes quickly as Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair messy from her nap, her bright eyes concerned. Emma, sweetheart, Mrs. Jensen said gently. Mr. Harrison has something very important to tell you. Emma climbed onto Mrs. Jensen's lap, looking at Bill with curious eyes. Bill took a deep breath, knowing that the next words out of his mouth would change everything. Emma, do you remember how you have that special mark on your wrist? Emma nodded, holding up her arm. Well, I have the same mark. And so did your mommy. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Really? And that mark means we're family, Emma. I'm your grandpa. Emma stared at Bill for a long moment, her 6-year-old mind processing this impossible revelation. Then, with the pure honesty that only children possess, she asked the question that broke Bill's heart. If you're my grandpa, where have you been? Mrs. Jensen shifted uncomfortably, but Bill knew this moment required complete truth. I made a terrible mistake, Emma. I had a fight with your mommy before you were born, and I was too proud and too scared to say I was sorry. I thought she would come back home, but she never did. Emma's small fingers traced the birthmark on her wrist. Mommy never told me about you. She was protecting you, sweetheart. And she was still hurt by our fight. Are you going to take me away from Mrs. Jensen? The fear in Emma's voice was unmistakable. Bill looked at Mrs. Jensen, who nodded encouragingly. No, honey. Mrs. Jensen loves you very much, and you love her. I don't want to take you away from her. I want to be part of your family, if you'll let me. Emma slipped off Mrs. Jensen's lap and walked over to Bill, studying his face with the intensity only children could manage. Do you have pictures of my mommy when she was little? Bill's throat tightened. I do. Lots of them. Would you like to see them? Emma nodded solemnly. The next few hours passed in a blur of photo albums, stories, and tentative bonding. Bill showed Emma pictures of Sarah learning to ride a bike, Sarah's first day of school, Sarah winning a spelling bee. With each photo, Emma's eyes grew wider, hungry for these glimpses of the mother she'd lost so young. She looks like me, Emma whispered, pointing to a photo of 7-year-old Sarah missing her front teeth. She does. And you have her brave heart. What's a brave heart? It means you're not afraid to love people, even when loving them is scary or hard. Emma considered this seriously. Mrs. Jensen says I have a brave heart too. Mrs. Jensen is very smart. As the evening wore on, Emma gradually warmed to Bill's presence. She showed him her drawings, her favorite books, and the small stuffed elephant that had been her comfort since Sarah's death. His name is Peanut, Emma explained. Mommy gave him to me when I was scared of the dark. That's a perfect name, Bill said, remembering how Sarah had named all her stuffed animals after foods when she was little. When it was time for Emma's bath and bedtime routine, Bill prepared to leave, but Emma surprised him. Grandpa Bill? Can you read me a story? Mrs. Jensen's eyes filled with tears at the simple request. This was the first time Emma had called him Grandpa. Bill read Goodnight Moon, in a voice rough with emotion, while Emma curled against his side on her small bed. When she fell asleep, he sat there for a long time, just watching her breathe, trying to memorize every detail of this moment. She's Sarah all over again, Mrs. Jensen whispered from the doorway. Mrs. Jensen, I need you to know something. I'm going to fight for Emma, but I'm not fighting against you. I want us to be a team. What do you mean? I mean I want to hire the best lawyers, pay for whatever medical care you need, and make sure Emma never has to choose between the people who love her. But I need your help to make the court understand that Emma belongs with family. Mrs. Jensen wiped her eyes. I've been so scared, Mr. Harrison. I love her so much, but I know I can't give her everything she needs. I lie awake at night terrified they'll put her with strangers. That's not going to happen. I promise you that. But as Bill drove home that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was making promises he might not be able to keep. The legal system had its own ideas about what was best for Emma, and being a wealthy grandfather didn't automatically make him a suitable guardian. He thought about Sarah's letter, about her hope that he'd learn to value love over money. Tomorrow, he would find out if 23 years had taught him enough to be the grandfather Emma deserved. The next morning brought the first challenge. Jennifer Walsh, the social worker, called Mrs. Jensen requesting an immediate home visit. She'd heard about Bill's involvement and wanted to assess the situation. Mrs. Jensen, Jennifer said, settling into the worn living room chair with her clipboard. I understand Emma has been in contact with someone claiming to be her grandfather? He's not claiming anything, Mrs. Jensen replied firmly. He is her grandfather. He has the DNA test to prove it. Jennifer made notes. And where has this grandfather been for the past 6 years of Emma's life? Bill, who had arrived early for the meeting, stepped forward. I've been making the biggest mistake of my life, Ms. Walsh. I lost my daughter 23 years ago because of my pride, and I've been searching for her ever since. I only found Emma by accident last week. Jennifer studied Bill with professional skepticism. Mr. Harrison, you're asking me to believe that a man of your resources couldn't find his own daughter for over 2 decades? I'm asking you to believe that sometimes pride and fear can make even smart people do incredibly stupid things. And now you want custody of a 6-year-old girl you've known for 1 week? I want Emma to be safe, loved, and cared for by people who put her needs first. Whether that's me, Mrs. Jensen, or both of us working together. Jennifer turned to Emma, who was sitting quietly on the couch, clearly sensing the tension in the room. Emma, how do you feel about Mr. Harrison? Emma looked between the adults, her wise eyes taking in more than a 6-year-old should have to process. He makes Mrs. Jensen less scared, Emma said simply. And he has pictures of my mommy. Jennifer made more notes, her expression unreadable. I'll need to conduct a full investigation, Mr. Harrison. Background checks, financial assessments, psychological evaluations. The court hearing is in 2 weeks, and I need to determine what placement recommendation I'll be making. After Jennifer left, Bill found Emma in her room, quietly coloring at her small desk. Emma, are you worried about what's going to happen? Emma set down her crayon. Mrs. Jensen says maybe I'll have to go live with different people. But I don't want to leave her. What if I told you that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you never have to leave Mrs. Jensen? Promise? Bill looked into those trusting blue eyes, Sarah's eyes, and made the most important promise of his life. I promise, Emma Grace. We're family, and families stick together. But even as he said the words, Bill knew the fight was just beginning. The background investigation turned Bill's life upside down in ways he never expected. Jennifer Walsh was thorough, professional, and utterly relentless in her pursuit of what she believed was best for Emma. Mr. Harrison, she said during their formal interview at the social services office, your work schedule shows you regularly put in 70-hour weeks. You travel internationally at least twice a month. You've never been married, have no experience with children, and live in a penthouse apartment with no child-proofing whatsoever. Bill had prepared for these questions, but hearing them laid out so starkly made him realize how his life looked from the outside. You're right about my work schedule, Ms. Walsh. But Emma is my priority now. I'm in the process of restructuring my business responsibilities to allow for a more balanced schedule. And Mrs. Jensen? Mrs. Jensen has been Emma's primary caregiver for over a year. She knows Emma's routines, her fears, her favorite foods, her bedtime stories. I'm not trying to replace Mrs. Jensen, I'm trying to support her. Jennifer flipped through her notes. Mrs. Jensen is 72 years old with diabetes and heart problems. She's behind on rent and struggling financially. How is maintaining this arrangement in Emma's best interests? Because love matters more than perfect circumstances. Emma has already lost her parents. Taking her away from the only stable caregiver she's known would be traumatic. Mr. Harrison, I've identified an excellent potential placement. The Richardson family has been approved for adoption, they have experience with children, and they can provide the stability that Emma needs. Bill's chest tightened. They're strangers, Ms. Walsh. I'm Emma's family. You're a stranger too, Mr. Harrison. You've known Emma for less than 2 weeks. That night, Bill couldn't sleep. He paced his penthouse, looking out at the city lights, trying to figure out how to convince a system that valued stability over blood ties, procedures over love. His phone rang at 2 a.m. Mrs. Jensen, crying? Mr. Harrison, Emma woke up screaming. She had a nightmare that people were taking her away. She's terrified. Bill threw on clothes and raced across the city. He found Emma curled in Mrs. Jensen's arms, her small body shaking with residual fear. Grandpa Bill? Emma's voice was tiny in the darkness. I'm here, sweetheart. In my dream, the lady with the clipboard took me to a house where I didn't know anybody. And you and Mrs. Jensen couldn't find me. Bill knelt beside the bed, taking Emma's small hand in his. Emma, look at me. That's not going to happen. Do you know why? Emma shook her head. Because I'm a very stubborn man, and when stubborn men love someone, they don't give up. Ever. Promise? I promise. But as Emma finally fell back to sleep, Mrs. Jensen pulled Bill aside. There's something I need to tell you. Jennifer Walsh called me this afternoon. She's recommending that Emma be placed with the Richardson family immediately after the hearing. Bill felt the world tilt. What did you tell her? I told her Emma belongs with her family. But Mr. Harrison. Mrs. Jensen's voice broke. What if she's right? What if Emma would be better off with a younger family who can give her everything? Do you believe that? Mrs. Jensen was quiet for a long moment. I believe Emma needs people who love her unconditionally. But I also know that love isn't always enough. The next morning brought more bad news. Marcus called with an update on his investigation into the Richardson family. They're perfect, Bill. Too perfect. He's a pediatric nurse, she's an elementary school teacher. They've been trying to adopt for 3 years, they have excellent references, and they genuinely want to help a child. There has to be something. There isn't. They're exactly what the system thinks Emma needs: young, stable, experienced with children, and completely devoted to the idea of being parents. Bill slammed his fist on his desk. Damn it, Marcus. I'm her grandfather. That has to count for something. It does count. But the system is asking a fair question. What can you give Emma that the Richardsons can't? Bill stared out his office window, watching the morning commuters hurry past on the street below. What could he give Emma that a perfect young couple couldn't? And then it hit him. Marcus, I need you to find out everything you can about Sarah's life in Portland. Every job she worked, every person she knew, every struggle she faced. Why? Because I need to prove that Emma doesn't just need a family, she needs her family. She needs to know where she comes from, who her mother was, and why her heritage matters. Bill, that's a pretty emotional argument to make to a family court judge. Then I'll make it an emotional argument. Because sometimes the heart knows things that paperwork can't measure. But as Bill hung up the phone, he realized he was about to face the biggest challenge of his business career. And possibly his life. He had 5 days to convince a judge that a workaholic grandfather and an elderly diabetic were better for Emma than a perfect young couple who had been waiting 3 years to become parents. 5 days to prove that love really was more important than circumstances. 5 days to honor Sarah's memory and keep his promise to Emma. The stakes had never been higher, and Bill Harrison had never felt less prepared for a fight. Bill's world exploded on Tuesday morning when Marcus burst into his office with a manila folder and a grim expression. We have a problem. A big one. Marcus threw photos across Bill's desk, images of Bill entering and leaving Mrs. Jensen's apartment building, telephoto shots of him with Emma at a nearby park, and documents that looked official and damning. Someone's been watching you, Bill. And they've been building a case against you. Bill's blood ran cold. Who? That's what I've been trying to figure out. But whoever it is, they've done their homework. They know about your business practices, your work schedule, even your medical history. Bill picked up one of the photos, him pushing Emma on a swing, both of them laughing. In isolation, it looked innocent. But presented the right way. They're going to say I'm some kind of predator, aren't they? Worse. They're going to say you're an unstable workaholic who's having a midlife crisis and using a vulnerable child to fill an emotional void. Who would do this? Marcus hesitated. I think it's someone who wants Emma placed with the Richardson family. Someone who has access to both your personal information and the social services files. Bill's mind raced. Jennifer Walsh? She's the obvious suspect, but I don't think so. She's thorough, but she's ethical. This feels more personal. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Harrison? There's a Detective Rodriguez here to see you. He says it's about Emma Martinez. Bill's heart stopped. Send him in. Detective Rodriguez was a heavy-set man in his 50s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He sat down across from Bill's desk and pulled out a notebook. Mr. Harrison, I'm investigating a complaint about your interactions with a minor child. Emma Martinez. What kind of complaint? Someone reported that you've been approaching this child inappropriately, giving her money, and trying to gain access to her home. Bill felt the room spinning. Detective, Emma is my granddaughter. I have DNA evidence to prove it. I'm sure you do, sir. But the person who filed this complaint claims you've been stalking this child and her guardian, and that you're using false family claims to gain their trust. That's insane. Who filed this complaint? I can't reveal that information, Mr. Harrison. But I need to ask you some questions. The interrogation lasted 2 hours. Detective Rodriguez was professional but thorough, asking about Bill's relationship with Sarah, his recent absences from work, his financial situation, and his interactions with Emma. Mr. Harrison, help me understand something. You're a successful businessman worth millions of dollars. You claim this child is your granddaughter, but you've had no contact with her for 6 years of her life. Now suddenly you're spending time with her every day. Can you see how that might look suspicious? Detective, I didn't know Emma existed until 2 weeks ago. I lost touch with my daughter 23 years ago, and I've been searching for her ever since. Finding Emma was an accident that changed my life. And Mrs. Jensen? How did you convince an elderly woman to let you into her home and around her foster child? I showed her the DNA results. I showed her family photos. Mrs. Jensen knew my daughter in Portland. She can verify everything I've told you. Detective Rodriguez made notes. I'll need to speak with Mrs. Jensen independently. And Mr. Harrison? I strongly advise you to limit your contact with Emma until this investigation is complete. You're asking me to stay away from my granddaughter? I'm asking you to be smart. If you really care about this child's welfare, you won't do anything that could jeopardize her placement. After Detective Rodriguez left, Bill sat in his office, staring at the photos spread across his desk. Someone had orchestrated this perfectly, making his legitimate attempts to connect with Emma look sinister and predatory. Marcus returned with more disturbing news. I found out who's behind this. It's not who we expected. Who? David Richardson. The potential adoptive father. Bill stared at Marcus. The pediatric nurse who wants to adopt Emma? He's not just a pediatric nurse, Bill. He's a pediatric nurse who's been trying to adopt for 3 years and has been turned down repeatedly. Emma represents his last chance. He and his wife are aging out of most adoption programs. So he's trying to eliminate the competition. It's more than that. I did some deeper digging. David Richardson has a brother who works in private investigation. They've been building a case against you from the moment you appeared on the scene. Bill felt sick. How do you know this? Because I found the brother. Tony Richardson. He's been following you, taking photos, and feeding information to David. Then David's been feeding selected information to social services, making it look like concerned citizen reports. Is that legal? Technically, yes. Citizens can report suspected child endangerment. And David Richardson genuinely believes he's protecting Emma from you. Bill's phone rang. Mrs. Jensen, sobbing. Mr. Harrison, they took her. Social services came with a police officer and took Emma. They said there were concerns about her safety. Bill's vision went black around the edges. Where did they take her? Emergency foster care. They said it was temporary, until the hearing, but Emma was screaming for me. She was so scared, Mr. Harrison. She kept asking why you weren't helping her. Bill closed his eyes, hearing Emma's voice from her nightmare. In my dream, the lady with the clipboard took me to a house where I didn't know anybody. Her nightmare had come true. Mrs. Jensen, listen to me. This isn't over. I'm going to fix this. How? They said the hearing is moved up to this Friday. That's 3 days, Mr. Harrison. 3 days to prove we deserve to keep Emma. After hanging up, Bill turned to Marcus. I need everything you can find on David and Tony Richardson. Every detail of their lives, their finances, their adoption attempts, everything. Bill, even if we expose what they've done, it doesn't change the fact that there's still a good placement for Emma. The court might decide that regardless of their methods, they're still the better option. Then we need to prove they're not. How? Bill stared out his window at the city below, thinking about Sarah's letter, about Emma's trust, about the promise he'd made to a 6-year-old girl who was now sitting in a stranger's house, wondering why her grandfather had let her down. By showing the court that sometimes being perfect on paper doesn't mean you're perfect for a child. And by proving that Emma already has a family, she just needs the system to recognize it. But as Bill began planning his legal strategy, one terrible thought kept echoing in his mind. What if the Richardsons were right? What if Emma really would be better off with them? What if his fight to keep her was really just selfish pride, exactly like the pride that had cost him Sarah 23 years ago? Marcus called at 3 a.m. with the breakthrough they'd been desperately seeking. "Bill, I found something. You need to get to my office now." Bill threw on clothes and raced through the empty Chicago streets, his mind churning with possibilities. Marcus was waiting with a pot of coffee and a stack of documents that would change everything. "I found out why David and Susan Richardson have been rejected for adoption 3 times," Marcus said, sliding a folder across his desk. Bill opened it to find psychiatric evaluations, home study reports, and court documents dating back 5 years. "David Richardson has an obsessive personality disorder," Marcus continued. "Not dangerous, but problematic. He becomes fixated on things he wants and can't let go. The adoption agencies flagged it as a potential issue." Bill read through the psychological evaluation. "It says he has difficulty accepting rejection and tends to view obstacles as personal attacks. Now look at this." Marcus showed him another document. "Susan Richardson has been having second thoughts about adoption for the past year. She's been seeing a therapist about her marriage and her doubts about becoming a mother. So they're not the perfect couple they appear to be? That's not the worst part, Bill. Look at this." Marcus pulled out a recording device. "I managed to get Tony Richardson to talk. He thought he was meeting with a potential client for private investigation services. I recorded the conversation." Marcus pressed play, and they heard Tony Richardson's voice, casual and unguarded. "Yeah, my brother's been obsessed with this kid for months. Ever since their social worker showed them her photo, he's been planning their whole life around her. Susan's getting freaked out by it, honestly. David's got Emma's room already set up, bought her clothes, even enrolled her in school. The kids never even met them." Bill's stomach turned. "He's treating Emma like an object he's going to acquire. It gets worse. Listen to this part." Tony's voice continued. "When this grandfather guy showed up, David went ballistic. Started talking about how some rich old man was trying to steal his daughter. That's when he asked me to dig up dirt on the guy. I told him it was crazy, but David's convinced this Emma kid is meant to be his." Marcus stopped the recording. "Bill, David Richardson isn't just trying to adopt Emma. He's obsessed with her. This isn't about giving a child a loving home, it's about David getting what he wants." Bill felt a chill run down his spine. "Have they had any contact with Emma? That's what I'm trying to find out. But there's something else." Marcus pulled out another document. "I found David's browser history. He's been researching Emma online, looking up her school records, her medical history, even trying to find photos of her. That's stalking behavior." "It is. And here's the kicker, he's been doing this for 8 months, since before Emma was even available for adoption. He somehow got access to her file while she was still with Mrs. Jensen." Bill's mind raced. How did he get access to confidential files? That's what I'm still working on. "But Bill, there's something else you need to know. I found out where Emma is staying." "Where?" "Emergency foster care with the Morrison family. But here's the thing. The Morrisons are friends of the Richardson family. They've been told this is a temporary placement before Emma goes to the Richardsons." Bill felt his blood pressure spike. "So Emma is essentially already in their custody network?" "Effectively, yes. And Bill, I spoke to the Morrisons' neighbor. Emma's been crying for Mrs. Jensen every night. She's not eating, barely sleeping. They're considering sedation if she doesn't calm down." Bill stood up abruptly. "I need to see her." "You can't. The restraining order is still in effect. What restraining order? Marcus looked uncomfortable. The one David Richardson filed yesterday. He claimed you were a threat to Emma's safety and got a temporary restraining order preventing you from contacting her until after the hearing. Bill felt trapped, desperate, and furious all at once. His granddaughter was crying herself to sleep in a stranger's house while a man with an obsessive disorder legally maneuvered to acquire her like a possession. Marcus, I need you to get this information to Jennifer Walsh immediately. And I need you to find out exactly how David Richardson gained access to Emma's confidential files. Already on it. But Bill, there's something else. I think Susan Richardson might be willing to talk. Her therapist's notes suggest she's having serious doubts about her husband's behavior regarding Emma. Set up a meeting. Are you sure? If David finds out, I don't care what David finds out. Emma has been in that foster home for 2 days, and according to you, she's falling apart. I won't let that continue. The meeting with Susan Richardson took place at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Susan was a petite woman in her 30s with kind eyes and an anxious demeanor. She looked exhausted and conflicted. Mrs. Richardson, thank you for meeting with me, Bill began carefully. I shouldn't be here, Susan said quietly. David would be furious if he knew. Mrs. Richardson, I need you to know that I'm not trying to hurt your family. I'm just trying to protect my granddaughter. Susan's eyes filled with tears. I know who you are, Mr. Harrison. I've seen the photos David has been collecting, the files he's been studying. This isn't normal behavior. What do you mean? David has been obsessed with Emma since he first saw her picture. Our spare bedroom is already decorated as her room. He's planned out her entire childhood, her education, her activities. He talks about her like she's already our daughter. Bill leaned forward. Susan, Emma is 6 years old and has already lost both her parents. She's been living with Mrs. Jensen for over a year, and Mrs. Jensen is the only stability she's known. Taking her away from that would be traumatic. I know, Susan whispered. I've tried to tell David that maybe we should wait for a different child, one who doesn't have family connections. But he won't listen. He says Emma is meant to be ours. What are you going to do? Susan was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to tell the court the truth at the hearing tomorrow. That David's obsession with Emma isn't healthy, and that maybe Emma belongs with her real family. Bill felt a surge of hope. Susan, that's incredibly brave. It's also going to end my marriage, Susan said sadly. But I can't be part of taking a child away from people who love her just because my husband is obsessed with the idea of being a father. As Susan left the coffee shop, Bill realized that tomorrow's hearing would determine not just Emma's future, but the futures of everyone involved, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt like they might actually have a chance. Bill couldn't sleep the night before the hearing. He sat in his penthouse at 3 a.m., surrounded by legal documents, photos of Sarah, and the family birthmark that had started this entire journey. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Jensen. Can't sleep either. Praying for Emma. Bill drove to Mrs. Jensen's apartment, finding her sitting in her kitchen with a cup of tea and Emma's drawings spread across the table. I keep looking at these, Mrs. Jensen said, touching a crayon drawing Emma had made of the three of them holding hands. She drew this after you told her you were her grandfather. She was so happy. Bill sat down across from her. Mrs. Jensen, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you saved Emma's life. When she had nobody, you became her family. I've been thinking about something, Mrs. Jensen said quietly. About what's really best for Emma. Bill's heart clenched. What do you mean? The Richardsons are young, healthy, financially stable. They can give Emma opportunities one never could. Maybe the system is right. Mrs. Jensen, don't do this. Don't give up now. I'm 72 years old with diabetes and heart problems. I can barely afford rent, let alone college funds or medical emergencies. Emma deserves better than a grandmother who might not live to see her graduate high school. Bill reached across the table and took her hand. Emma deserves people who love her unconditionally. People who see her as Emma, not as a solution to their own problems. You've given her that love every day for over a year. But what if love isn't enough? Then we make it enough. Mrs. Jensen, I want to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer. Mrs. Jensen looked up at him. If Emma could choose where to live, what do you think she would choose? Mrs. Jensen was quiet for a long moment. She'd choose to stay with me and have you as her grandfather. She'd choose for us all to be a family together. Then that's what we fight for tomorrow. At 6 a.m., Bill's phone rang. Marcus, with last-minute intelligence. Bill, I found out how David Richardson accessed Emma's files. Jennifer Walsh's computer was hacked. Someone with advanced technical skills broke into the social services database and accessed Emma's entire case file. Tony Richardson? Has to be. And Bill, there's more. I found Susan Richardson's therapist. She's willing to testify about David's obsessive behavior if needed. What about Emma? How is she doing? Marcus's pause told Bill everything he needed to know. Not good. The Morrisons say she's been asking for you and Mrs. Jensen constantly. She's not eating, not sleeping well. They're concerned about her emotional state. Bill felt physically ill. I need to see her before the hearing. You can't. The restraining order. I don't care about the restraining order. My granddaughter is falling apart, and I'm the only family she has left. At 7 a.m., Bill made a decision that could either save Emma or destroy any chance of custody. He drove to the Morrison house, knowing that violating the restraining order could result in his arrest. Through the front window, he could see Emma sitting at the breakfast table, staring at a bowl of cereal she wasn't eating. She looked tiny and lost, nothing like the bright, curious child he met just 2 weeks ago. Bill knocked on the door. Mrs. Morrison answered, looking surprised and concerned. Mr. Harrison? You're not supposed to be here. I know. But I need Emma to know I haven't abandoned her. Can I please just talk to her for 5 minutes? Mrs. Morrison looked torn. She's been asking for you constantly. She thinks you don't want her anymore. Emma appeared behind Mrs. Morrison, her eyes wide and hopeful. Grandpa Bill? You came back. Bill knelt down as Emma ran into his arms, her small body shaking with relief. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I've been trying to come see you, but there were some legal things I had to take care of. I thought you left me like everyone else. Emma whispered against his chest. Emma, look at me. Bill pulled back so she could see his face. I will never leave you. Do you understand? Never. Today we're going to court, and I'm going to tell the judge that you belong with your family. With you and Mrs. Jensen? With me and Mrs. Jensen. Emma showed him her wrist, the small birthmark that had brought them together. We match. We match, Bill confirmed. And that means we belong together. Mrs. Morrison cleared her throat. Mr. Harrison, I have to call this in. But I want you to know that Emma belongs with people who love her like you do. As Bill left the Morrison house, he knew he'd probably just complicated their case even further. But he also knew that Emma needed to understand she wasn't abandoned, that she was loved, and that today's hearing was about bringing her home. At 8 a.m., Bill met with his attorney, David Chen, one of Chicago's top family law specialists. Bill, visiting Emma this morning was incredibly risky, David said as they prepared for court. If David Richardson's attorney finds out, they'll use it to argue that you're unstable and disregard legal boundaries. Let them. Emma needed to know I haven't given up on her. Okay, here's our strategy. We're going to present 3 arguments. First, Emma has the right to remain with her known family. Second, Mrs. Jensen has provided excellent care and Emma's emotional well-being depends on continuity. Third, David Richardson's obsessive behavior makes him unsuitable as a guardian. What about the Richardsons' strengths? They're going to point out that they're young, stable, and experienced with children. David Chen smiled grimly. Let them. Because we have something they don't have. What's that? We have Emma's voice. And today, for the first time in this process, Emma is going to tell the court where she wants to live. As they walked toward the courthouse, Bill thought about Sarah's letter, about Emma's nightmares, about Mrs. Jensen's fierce love, and about the promise he'd made to a 6-year-old girl. Today, he would either keep that promise or fail Emma the same way he'd failed Sarah. But this time, Bill Harrison was ready to fight for love over pride, for family over convenience, and for a little girl who deserved to grow up knowing she was wanted exactly as she was. The hearing was about to begin, and everything hung in the balance. Judge Patricia Hawkins had presided over family court for 22 years, but the tension in her courtroom that Friday morning was unlike anything she'd experienced. On one side sat William Harrison with his attorney and Mrs. Jensen, whose hands trembled as she clutched Emma's drawings. On the other side, David Richardson sat alone. Susan had filed for separation the night before and refused to attend. Emma sat in the front row with her court-appointed advocate, wearing a yellow dress Mrs. Jensen had bought for her 7th birthday. She looked small and fragile, but her eyes were alert, watching every face in the room. "This hearing will determine the permanent placement of Emma Grace Martinez," Judge Hawkins began. "We have 3 placement options before us: continued guardianship with Mrs. Margaret Jensen, placement with Mr. William Harrison as biological grandfather, or adoption by Mr. David Richardson." David Richardson's attorney, Patricia Wells, stood first. "Your Honor, my client represents stability and experience. Mr. Richardson is a pediatric nurse with 14 years of experience caring for children. He can provide Emma with a traditional 2-parent home, financial security, and age-appropriate caregivers." Judge Hawkins nodded. "Mr. Richardson, please tell the court why you believe Emma should be placed with you." David Richardson stood, his voice steady but his eyes intense. "Your Honor, I've been preparing for Emma's arrival for months. Her bedroom is ready, she's enrolled in the best school district, and I've already arranged for tutoring and extracurricular activities. Emma deserves parents who can give her everything." "Mr. Richardson," Judge Hawkins interrupted, "can you explain your involvement in the investigation of Mr. Harrison?" David shifted uncomfortably. "I was concerned about a stranger approaching Emma. I felt it was my duty to protect her. By hiring your brother to conduct surveillance and filing false reports with police?" "I never filed false reports, Your Honor. I reported genuine concerns about an older man approaching a vulnerable child." Bill's attorney, David Chen, stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Richardson, how many times have you met Emma?" We were waiting for the proper legal channels." "So you've never met her? But you've prepared a bedroom for her, enrolled her in school, and planned her entire future. Don't you find that unusual?" "I find it responsible." "Mr. Richardson, is it true that your wife filed for separation yesterday because she was concerned about your obsession with Emma?" David's face flushed red. "My personal life is not relevant to Emma's placement." Judge Hawkins leaned forward. "Mr. Richardson, I'm concerned about your psychological evaluation from 3 previous adoption attempts. Can you explain why you were deemed unsuitable for placement?" "Those were different circumstances, Your Honor. Different agencies with different standards." David Chen produced a document. "Your Honor, this is a recording of David Richardson's brother discussing Mr. Richardson's obsession with Emma, made before Mr. Richardson had ever met the child." As the recording played, revealing David's months of planning and researching Emma's life, the courtroom fell silent. David Richardson's face went pale. Judge Hawkins made notes. "Mr. Chen, call your first witness." Mrs. Jensen walked to the witness stand with shaking hands, but a determined expression. "Mrs. Jensen," David Chen began gently, "tell the court about your relationship with Emma." "Emma came to me when she was 4 years old, after her parents died. She was scared, traumatized, and didn't trust anyone. It took months for her to feel safe enough to sleep through the night." "How has Emma responded to Mr. Harrison?" "She calls him Grandpa Bill. When he showed her pictures of her mother, Emma cried happy tears for the first time since Sarah died. She finally understood where she came from." "Mrs. Jensen, are you capable of continuing to care for Emma?" Mrs. Jensen's voice broke slightly. "I love Emma more than my own life, but I'm 72 and my health isn't perfect. However, with Mr. Harrison's support, I believe Emma can have the best of both worlds: family who knows her history and stability for her future." David Richardson's attorney tried to discredit Mrs. Jensen's health and financial situation, but her love for Emma was undeniable. Next, Bill took the stand. "Mr. Harrison," his attorney began, "tell the court about your relationship with Emma's mother." Bill's voice was thick with emotion. "Sarah was my daughter, and I failed her. 23 years ago, I chose pride over love, and I lost her forever. I won't make that mistake with Emma. What can you offer Emma that others cannot? I can offer her the truth about her mother. I can give her Sarah's journals, her photographs, her family history. I can make sure she knows she's loved not because she's convenient, but because she's family. Mr. Harrison, you're a busy executive. How will you balance work and childcare? I've already restructured my business responsibilities. Emma is my priority now. But I'm not asking to raise Emma alone. Mrs. Jensen has been her mother figure for over a year. Emma needs both of us." Patricia Wells cross-examined aggressively, questioning Bill's parenting experience and his long absence from Emma's life. But Bill remained calm, always bringing the focus back to Emma's needs and Sarah's memory. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. "Your Honor," Davidson said, "we request that Emma be allowed to speak for herself." Judge Hawkins looked at Emma's advocate, who nodded. "Emma, can you come up here?" Emma walked to the witness stand, looking tiny in the large chair. Judge Hawkins spoke gently. "Emma, do you understand why we're here today?" Emma nodded solemnly. "You're deciding where I'm going to live." "That's right." "Emma, where do you want to live?" Emma looked around the courtroom, her eyes stopping on each adult who wanted to control her future. "I want to live with Mrs. Jensen because she takes care of me when I'm scared and she makes the best peanut butter sandwiches. And I want Grandpa Bill to be my family because he has pictures of my mommy and he has the same mark as me." Emma held up her wrist, showing the birthmark. "Mrs. Jensen says families are people who love you no matter what. Grandpa Bill and Mrs. Jensen love me no matter what." Judge Hawkins leaned forward. "Emma, do you know Mr. Richardson?" Emma looked at David Richardson and shook her head. "He wants me to live with him, but I don't know him. He's not my family." "How do you know Mr. Harrison is your family?" Emma smiled for the first time all day. "Because when I see him, I don't feel scared anymore. And because he keeps his promises." After Emma returned to her seat, Judge Hawkins called a brief recess. When court resumed, her expression was determined. "I've heard compelling arguments from all parties, but this case ultimately comes down to one question: what is in Emma's best interests? Mr. Richardson, your desire to help a child is admirable, but your behavior toward Emma has been obsessive and inappropriate. Preparing for a child's arrival before meeting them, researching their personal history without permission, and manipulating legal processes are not the actions of a suitable guardian. Mr. Harrison, your absence from Emma's life is concerning, but your efforts to support both Emma and Mrs. Jensen demonstrate genuine commitment to Emma's welfare rather than your own desires. Mrs. Jensen, your love for Emma is evident, and Emma's attachment to you is profound. However, your age and health limitations require additional support. Therefore, the court awards joint custody of Emma Grace Martinez to her biological grandfather, William Harrison, and her current guardian, Margaret Jensen, with Mr. Harrison designated as primary guardian for legal purposes. Emma will continue to live with Mrs. Jensen with Mr. Harrison's full support and involvement." Emma's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. She ran to Mrs. Jensen and Bill, wrapping her arms around both of them. Judge Hawkins continued, "Mr. Harrison, you will provide financial support for Emma's care and Mrs. Jensen's health needs. Mrs. Jensen will continue as Emma's primary daily caregiver. This arrangement will be reviewed annually to ensure it remains in Emma's best interests." As they left the courthouse, Emma walking between her grandfather and her guardian, Bill thought about Sarah's letter. She had hoped he would find grace, the grace to forgive, to love unconditionally, and to put family first. Looking down at Emma's bright smile and Mrs. Jensen's relieved tears, Bill realized he had finally learned what Sarah had tried to teach him 23 years ago. Love wasn't about perfection or control or having all the right answers. Love was about showing up, keeping promises, and choosing family every single day. Emma Grace Harrison, he would make sure she legally carried the Harrison name. Would grow up knowing exactly where she came from and how much she was wanted, and somewhere, Bill believed, Sarah was smiling too.